You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm your host, Claire Pedrick, and it's a pleasure to have you here at the Inn. It would be lovely to find out where in the world you are. So do send us an email to info@3dcoaching.com or put a comment in the place where you listen to your podcasts. And if you want to rate and review while you're there, that would be amazing. So you may know that I, in a bonkers way, decided to start some walks for coaches around the UK and, well, actually in Malvern, and then people have picked up the idea. And a couple of people in Birmingham picked up the idea, and I went on their inaugural walk where I met Jackie Lawlor.
Yeah, it was divine to meet you on that walk. Yes, it was a lovely ramble and chat.
It was amazing. It was bluebell time, wasn't it? And we had
Gorgeous.
such a beautiful time.
Yeah,
and I had
absolutely.
seen you across a pub at a rained off coach's walk and waved hello, hadn't I?
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we had the most extraordinary conversation. And so I said to Jackie, lovely listener, you must come to the Coaching Inn so we can carry on. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you for having me, Claire. And you said it was an extraordinary conversation, and I was quite flabbergasted when you said it was an extraordinary conversation. So I'm really looking forward to expanding that conversation here.
It's funny, isn't it? Because as we're talking, I can see where we went in my mind's eye. And I can see where we stopped and we spoke and it's amazing.
Wonderful.
So tell us about your journey into coaching, Jackie.
I think my journey into coaching happened long before I was a coach. I've always been, from being a little girl at school, I was always the person that kind of looked out for the waifs and strays, because I felt a little bit of an outsider all through my school career, and I'd find myself drawn to the out groups and befriend the person who didn't have any friends or was slightly odd. And then I was drawn to kind of careers that involved helping people to create the conditions to be at their best, no matter where they found themselves. I started out in the civil service working with long-term unemployed people, and later in a job centre, and I did lots of specialist work there with groups of homeless people, for example. And it was all about helping them to find within themselves what was their uniqueness, what could they bring to the situation. And then I went to work in a charity, working with people with all kinds of health conditions, life-limiting, HIV and AIDS, very much the same kind of work. And then I went to the NHS for the later part of my career, and I went into leadership. And so again, but just different client groups. But the same themes and patterns were emerging, and it was all about self-doubt and can I do this, and comparison, and I'm not good enough, and so that's the kind of long, sorry.
It's not long. What's beautiful is that all of us had conversations long before we became coaches. And I love that you own that. Because often people go, oh, well, I didn't become a coach until 2025. And you want to go, well, did you not talk to anybody before 2025?
Yeah. I call it the golden thread. I often refer to it in my coaching sessions. Yeah. I didn't actually say when I kind of started officially coaching. So 2005, I did a coaching certificate with the Newcastle University, and it was more of an informal one. It was a free offer. It was quite in depth, and you got your assignments reviewed. And I loved doing the assignments, getting the feedback, going and doing some more practice. And then in 2012, I had the opportunity to be, formally coach trained, and I became accredited with the AMCC. I'm an ILM7 coach now, but I count all of it because it all counts, and it's been a lovely, exciting, rewarding journey.
Wow. For those of you in other parts of the world, ILM is a British qualification. It's about the equivalent of a master's degree, isn't it?
Yeah.
ILM stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our conversation, walking through the bluebells, was all about having conversations with people who think differently and may have struggled to have conversations with others before.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's what I was saying to you about why I came to, for example, clean language, because I have often struggled to understand in the way people would expect me to understand them, or to be understood, both. And that's caused, quite a lot of anxiety in my life, and has definitely led to, my imposter syndrome in the past, because when someone gives you, so it depends on the relationship and the context and everything. But so, for example, in the later part of my career, when I was in a very fast-paced environment with people who had, big agendas, and it was go, 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 and your instructions are thrown at you, and and I was struggling to kind of grasp what the person wanted from me. And after a few times of saying, can I just check? Is this what you want, or can you give me an example, or that's like what, after a while, depending on the personality, you can start to feel that they're judging you, and maybe they are judging you, and maybe they're thinking you haven't got this, and maybe I'm thinking I haven't got this. So around that time, in fact it was a bit earlier than that, it was in the NHS but not in the later part, I discovered this wonderful thing called clean language, which helps you to unpick and unpack some of that stuff for yourself and with other people. And that made a big difference, I think, on my journey. Yeah. And also realizing that I am neurodivergent, although I've never had a formal diagnosis. There is, neurodivergence that is formally diagnosed in my family, and I can spot it in the people that haven't had a diagnosis, and I can absolutely spot it now in myself, and I'm working up towards having a formal assessment probably later this year. But I think that I am ADHD and DCD, which used to be called dyspraxia. So that was another part of, I'll just keep talking, Claire, unless you tell me to stop, because all the connections I've been making recently. So going way back to the person at school, I was really quite shy, very introverted, very good. I'd hide. And when I went to work, because of all the reasons that, my civil service job, and it wasn't a great fit initially, it was in a benefit office processing benefits. I'm not very mathsy. It was quite dull. And I remember one manager seeing something that was often a thing. People would see things in me and think, oh, Jackie saw this, and then I'd let them down somehow. I wasn't very good at this aspect of my work, and she really tried to mentor me. And I still wasn't very good at it because I just didn't get it, and so I kind of evolved this personality with the kind of the DCD, the dyspraxia. It's often about being clumsy. I trip over things. I bump into things. I can be a bit catastrophic, particularly when I'm stressed. And I developed a reputation for, oh, here she comes again, that's Jackie doing her thing, and people would laugh at me, and it would be a bit of a joke. And at the time, it felt like a way of fitting in, and I'd play on it. But there came a time later in that civil service career when I wanted to progress, and it was blooming hard to shake that off. In fact, I took it into my next job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and when I wanted to progress, and I didn't want people to see me in this, quirky. I do embrace quirky, but I don't want people to see me as entirely this quirky person. So it was very hard to actually remake myself into the kind of person I wanted to be. And I was when I went into a job centre, I loved that job. It was a really good fit for me, and I was able to progress. But still, this label followed me. So it takes me back to how we can mask, how we can hide bits of ourselves, as a way of getting that approval, that recognition, that love, that affection. But actually, it can really feed the imposter syndrome, because I'm not very good at all of that. But actually, people like me. I'm kind. I'm nice. So I'm going to stop talking.
And there are lots of other things. There are lots of things that you can do, aren't there?
Absolutely.
I was talking to a friend yesterday and saying, how did I not know that I was, we didn't know about neurodivergence, did we? But I was the child who endlessly broke bones.
Yes.
So when I had children who endlessly broke bones, I thought that was normal, and I could never understand, and cut their heads open and all those things.
Yes.
And I could never understand why that didn't seem to happen to anybody else.
Yeah.
But what I know now, and it's like we're learning all the time, aren't we? It's almost every day. You think, oh yeah, that's that too, and that makes sense. Can I pick you up on a question, because I'm really interested in finding out what difference did it make to your conversations when you used clean language at that point, before you were a coach?
I was coaching. I'm just trying to think when I picked up clean language. It was probably a good 8 or 9 years ago. So I was in the civil service. I was coaching, but I wasn't coaching full time. But it was really useful to be able to say, when someone would say something to me, I could kind of slow the conversation down and say, "Can I just check?" So this project, this thing, that's like what? There's clean and cleanish questions. And I might say, they might not get, that's like what? What's that like is clean-ish. Yeah. Can you give me an example? What would you be seeing and hearing if it was just as you'd want it to be? Which is a question we ask a lot in coaching anyway. What needs to happen before that happens? So that could be a lead into the kind of, who do you want me to speak to, or so you can slow things down, you can move time backwards and forwards. What needs to happen before this happens? As it's happening, that's like what? And when I've done that, then what happens? It could be, is there a relationship between this thing and that thing? It could be a really useful question is generating a metaphor, perhaps not in the incidents that we're talking about now, but that is super useful when you're talking to maybe a member of staff, and they're very they've got lots going on and loads of information, and it's and you say, and all of that is like what, or that's like what, and you get a metaphor, so you then can develop the metaphor. And when you develop the metaphor, it's actually in your system, it's acting on the issue, and you don't need to know about the issue. So I'm probably moving away from the question you've asked me a little bit, but it's still kind of in that frame. When I was in my last NHS role, and it was very fast paced in one of those roles, and I was really struggling with that. I sought some support from a trusted colleague. I mean, this is all past history now, it's a long time. And it was all just so big for me, and I didn't know what to do with how I felt. And I just said to someone that I trusted, it's like being pulled behind a carriage and 4 horses, and it's go faster, do more. And I feel I'm bobbing around, and I feel as though I'm going to be thrown out, and I don't know when it's going to stop. And expressing it like that was absolutely how I felt in that moment. And that person, who was also a coach, was able to help me break that down. And then I was able to kind of get to so what would I like? So that's a clean question. What would I like to happen here? What would I like to happen now? What would I like to happen next? what needs to happen for that to happen. I thought about some of the questions I wanted to ask the person. I asked the person who was coaching me non-clean questions like, is there anything that, I've done all these things, what might I be missing? What am I not seeing here? What other options do you think are available to me? These are all the things I've thought of and tried. And I think, so that leads me to, clean is one of the most valuable tools in my toolkit, and also NLP, some transactional analysis. There's this wider than clean thing called systemic modelling, which is about, it's more the kind of team stuff and making sure all the voices in the conversation are heard. All of that, right, plays into my toolkit, and it's so rich and so it's so helpful in helping me to trust myself, so that I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Jackie. It's so helpful enabling me to trust myself, is what you said. And my encouragement to you is, it feels as though there's an awful lot of things inside you, and then you're expressing gratitude to these labels.
Yes.
And yet in talking to you, it feels as though how you are is an integrated part of you, and they don't really matter anymore.
I actually think those different facets of myself are an asset now, because I can be with other people's discomfort. I can see and feel what it's like for them. I don't have to get lost in that. There is a route out. I think it's a positive asset. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think that thing that you just picked up is, I've come to that quite recently, in fact, only today when I was talking with a fellow coach. It wasn't a coaching session, it was just a conversation. I was talking about being our own safety and having, something that we can kind of draw on, a question we can ask or an approach we can take, in order that we can be that for the person sat in front of us. Yeah.
What a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
So many ways to go. Can we just stay with what difference does being able to communicate clearly have when you're talking with people who process differently? That was a really bad, very long question. Please make it your own.
No, I've got it. Well, it's not just coaching clients, it's with my husband. Absolutely every day he'll say something and I will not have a clue what he means. So, and often it's because he's neurodivergent, although he would never admit to that label, and I don't think he would own it, but I see it. And so he will quite often say something that's in his mind, as though he's giving me some context, but it's set and there'll be no context, so I will have no clue. So I'll simply say to him, can you just, where did that come? Can you give me some context? And then he'll say, oh, sorry, and then he'll tell me more about what it is. That's an example. Or what's an example of with a client? People will often generalize, and I think the clean questions are fantastic for when people are generalizing about something they're experiencing, or about something about themselves. So I'm just thinking of someone who at the moment had a really bad experience in their career. It was 1996, and they're holding on to it now, and they are really limiting what they believe they can do based on this person's opinion, which came from fear and rigidity, and it was theirs, it didn't belong to this person. So they are believing that they're going to mess up again, that that they haven't got permission to do the thing they want to do, and they're very able. So you can explore, I don't know if this is a good example, but I could explore, well, what does permission, permission for you is a clean question. Permission for you is like what? Now there's two things in there. Permission for you and then there is like what, and then that person can say, well, it's this and it's that, and then we might get into that, and again, some of these will link to some of the things you might do as a coach, and you know, and when it's permission like that, whereabouts is permission? You know, so looking at giving themselves permission, where is that permission? So yeah, I don't know whether I'm not very good at talking about things. Things are much clearer in my head than they are when they come out of my mouth.
That
so
sounded very clear to me. So
yeah,
we talked a lot about being human and being vulnerable and being normal, didn't we?
absolutely. Yeah, and I love the messiness of being human. And I think we all think that we have to be this model of whatever we think, you know, success is. You know, that we have to look away and sound away and be away and organise in a particular way. And actually, that is so unique. So one of the things, for example, going back to clean, that I love is that you can model, and this is NLP as well, because actually the guy that David Groves, the guy that is credited for really developing clean, he'd done some NLP, and so it's kind of built on from that, although he extended it massively more into lots of different
you
areas.
have.
Yes, I've made it my own. But then he did say, take this and apply it to whatever you're doing and make it your own. You know, I've lost my train of thought now in my excitement. What was I just saying to you before I lost my? Welcome to my world, Claire.
Do you think I can remember?
I was saying something that had a point, but I can't now remember what it was. It might come back in a minute. But yeah, what was the question?
We were talking about being human, and we were talking about, he said, make it your own.
Yes, and the messiness, and so I was talking about, you know, people often come to me and they're neurodivergent, and they may or may not know with issues around time. So we can, you know, clean and modelling time is such a useful thing about. So let's look at how you experience time. You know, where and I get them to use their hands. If you know, place your hand where yesterday is, and they might say, they might say it's over here, you can't see my hand to my right. They might say it's back here, but it could be over here, you know. And where is now, and where is tomorrow? Where's next week? Where's next month? And for some people, tomorrow is way over there. You know, for me, you know, now is here, tomorrow is kind of here, but anything after that is over there. So it's out of sight and kind of out of mind, and I can easily lose track of things. So then we look at when you're managing time at your best, that's like what are you seeing and hearing? Really get a personal model for what time is like. And again, this is one of those instances where I almost think if you could talk to many other clean people, they'd give a better description than that. But it works, and it really helps people to think, actually, this is really interesting. I do experience time in this unusual way, and the reason I, you know, kind of things go off my radar is because actually, you know, the day after tomorrow is like way in the distance.
It's really interesting, Jackie, because as you talk, a lot of the way you're talking is about looking at things.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not talking about things.
Oh.
And when you were talking about when you first started using clean, it made me, the sense I got was that you were using it as a way of organising your thoughts in a different way.
I think that's part of it, and I think the NLP does as well. So, for example, I'm often going through the NLP logical levels. What level is the person at, and using clean to kind of talk about the different levels. That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that before. I think one of the most useful things about clean is it enables me to stay in my body, because I can feel calm and peace knowing that I can just ask a question about what they've just said. David Grove talked about, I can't remember the exact words, but sort of interrogating their experience, putting some space between their experience and your experience, and that is very valuable to me. I'm building rapport with their stuff. That's what he said. So I'm building rapport with their stuff, but I'm not getting in the boat with them. And that helps me to stay in my body and be much kind of calmer and more grounded. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. Yeah, interesting. Maybe it's a combination of all of those things.
Inside you.
Inside me. Yeah.
So what's your dream for coaching?
Oh, let me have a think. You can see I'm processing now. I process somewhere up here. My dream for coaching is that it doesn't, so let's do a towards, not an away from, that it is available to anyone and everyone that needs it. And as I say that, I'm thinking about blooming AI, which I am just not loving, and I'm quite terrified of it actually. And I do know some people that use it really thoroughly. I'm talking about human. So back to the messiness of being human and actually having someone just pausing you and stopping you and just helping you to explore that thing that, you know, is true for you. And is it true for you? And what else could be possible? That coaching becomes ever more available, mainstream, part of how we do things. It sits adjacent to counselling. I think there's a place for both. And actually, there's a blurry line for me between the two, because when you're working on personal stuff, as I so often am with people, I work with a lot of doctors and leaders, and you know, work affects home and home affects work. So there's a bit of a blurry line, and I do dance either side of that blurry line, very gently and carefully. And AI doesn't do that for me. It's kind of, it's black and it's white. So that coaching was more available, that we could coach more, we could train more coaches, get more leaders to coach, have our government open to being coached and getting some feedback that's not just an echo chamber. That's my dream. Yeah.
Because it's about building awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can we just stay with awareness for a minute? Nathan Whitbread and Kim Whitten and I are writing this book about working with people who are neurodivergent. And we've got a section on 3 things that it's useful to be aware of. So it's not about knowledge, it's just about awareness. I am really interested, Jackie. What would your 3 things be?
I think be aware that people who have a different perception, that perception is often really valuable. So, you know, taking time and care to embrace. So one of the things that drew me to systemic modelling, for example, is questions like, who's, you know, having a discussion, who's different to this? Who's got something else? Who's got something else again? So you're bringing difference into the room. I mean, that is key to me. And another question is, who's similar to that? So that you can get a feel for what's in the room and everyone feels included. So listen to those. Listen to those people that think and process differently. They have something valuable to offer. And sometimes they might be tricky because they might bring an edge of, well, something that could create discomfort. Somebody who's autistic, for example, might be kind of quite hung up on a point, and it'll be because that is significant for them. They're thinking about the safety of this, or an unintended consequence, or you know, something that you might not have thought of. So that's definitely one. 2 is I think this goes across the board really. Playfulness and fun. There isn't enough of that in work. I think, you know, many people are at their best when they are not tense, and when they're, you know, and having an element of playfulness and fun and curiosity, you know, opens up new dimensions, new possibilities. We can't laugh and be tense. It's impossible physically to do that. So I don't know whether you'd said that was directly related to your book, but I do think that that is really important. What would my third one be? Learn. So, that thing that I might be judging in someone, what do I have of that in myself? And what can I learn from this person that I might want from myself? It could be the unending energy and curiosity of the person with ADHD, or it could be the wanting to actually make sure things are, as they should be, and have got a flow and a sequence and an order, so working with people who are different to yourself. And I once worked with a woman that was very procedural, and I thought we'd be a nightmare working together, but we were a dream team because I had ideas and in abundance, and and I'd kind of like, oh, we could do this, and she would corral them down and slot them together, and together we were just amazing. Yeah.
Do you know, as you're talking, I am so reminded of a friend who I used to work with called Jane, and Jane used to talk about learn to look round the corner.
I love that.
And that's everything that you've just said in the last few minutes is about learning to look round the corner.
Yes.
Because we can't look round corners, but somebody else's way of thinking can help us to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's you didn't ask me for a fourth thing, but I think, something about neurodivergence runs in families. So, recognizing in children what's going on for them, and kindness, compassion, curiosity, so that imposter syndrome often starts in our family settings, comparison by other people or ourselves to other people. So I think I'd just add that in, that curiosity, kindness and compassion in childhood with our children.
You've just reminded me of a little girl that I met. She was 8, I think. I met her about 6 months ago, and I was chairing a conference session, and her dad was speaking, and he'd brought her with him, and he said, can she sit with you? And he said, she's going through a diagnosis for ADHD.
Yeah.
And I said, we'll be friends then.
Absolutely.
And I looked at this child and I thought to myself, I just hope for a different future for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And we got on great. She was drawing 3 pictures at the same time, and every time she'd finished on one picture, she'd put all her pencils away and zip up the pencil case, put it on the floor, and then she'd pick it up again and open it and do a different picture in a different book. And then this happened for like an hour. And it was just beautiful. And I knew just to sit there holding the pencil case when she gave it to me, and all would be well. But I did look at her and thought of all the people our age who now know something that we didn't know before at our age.
Yes.
And just really hoping for her that there'll be a very different future.
Oh, and I just, that is so moving. And I would hope that those of us that have kind of lived through this personally could look back to ourselves at that age, and what would we have wanted? How could, what would have helped us? What would have soothed us? What would have encouraged us, supported us then? And maybe we can now be that for the young people around us. Yeah, absolutely. Gorgeous,
well,
Claire.
Jackie, what an absolute pleasure to have you.
Right back at you. It's been beautiful.
Coaching in, and I am very much hoping that we'll have another walk.
Yes, well, you've got one coming up in Worcester, and we've got one that we're about to advertise the week after, probably quite badly timed, in Birmingham. It'll be on, if you look up Jackie Lawlor on LinkedIn, I'll be putting that on in the next day or two. Yeah, a Birmingham one.
In the Lickey Hills or elsewhere?
In the Lickey Hills again, open to all, experienced coaches, professional coaches. It's about 5 miles, and so bring the right footwear, and we have gorgeous, rich conversations, and it's very life enhancing. So yes, please do look out for that. Thank you.
So that's how they find out about your walk in the Lickey Hills. How do they find out about you, Jackie?
At the moment, it is just on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn profile's not very impressive because I'm just trying to reimagine it at the moment. My website's down for the same reasons, but yes, contacts could be through my LinkedIn personal message. I'll be very happy to speak to people. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll put that in the show notes, everyone. Thank you, Jackie, for coming to the Coaching
Thank you
In.
very much, Claire, for inviting me. It's been a delight.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching In, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching In, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.